This is GamesAtWork.biz, your weekly podcast about gaming, technology, and play. Your hosts are Michael Martin, Andy Piper, and Michael Rowe. The thoughts and opinions on this podcast are those of the hosts and guests alone and are not the opinions of any organization which they have been, are, or may be affiliated with.
This is episode 515, Seeing Through Walls. Hello everybody, welcome once again to GamesAtWork.biz, your weekly technology podcast. My name is Andy Piper, and joining me for this exciting show talking about all things tech, AI, gaming and vision are two friends of mine called Michael. I'm going to kick it across first of all to Mr. Michael Rowe. How are you?
Hey, Andy, I am doing well, and I am happy to be here. And I don't know if it's going to be exciting. It's going to be interesting.
Interesting, all right.
But not in the interesting times aspect. Just interesting. Michael, welcome back, and how are you?
Great, and it's wonderful that we're all together. So let's see how interesting we can make it.
At least this week.
Yes. Well, that's the purpose of having three co-hosts, right? You know, we swap in, we swap out, we keep things rolling. And
keep the audience guessing.
Yeah, and well, let's start rolling with our first couple of stories here. We found independently some news about Mr. Vader, as he is known to his friends, Darth, as he is known to people who are not his friends, and they're not his friends for long.
I thought people who are not his friends know him as.
Yeah, there's that. So in Fortnite, there is a non-player character of Darth Vader. So no surprise that this part of the Marvel and Star Wars cinematic universe is in Fortnite, which is really cool. However, we're starting off with a story from Wired that's talking about how people, shocker, are able to bypass some of the AI filters and get Darth Vader to do some things that maybe it wasn't originally thought of to design to do, but he does anyway. What did you guys take away?
Well, this was, as we've talked in the pre-show, kind of a we kind of expect this. This is like the meets min requirement of any AI story nowadays is, can you make it say things it shouldn't, right? And so, yes, success. Thank you, Fortnite.
Right. So maybe the more intriguing thing that comes afterwards, though, is the Kotaku article that's talking about, hey, Fortnite is having some challenges being placed by the Screen Actors Guild. And my high-level read of this that I took away is a little bit more interesting, is that the Screen Actors Guild, and we've talked about this before too, has filed, what do they call this, an unfair labor practice charge with the National Labor Relations Board because of this actor. Now, the family estate had provided a mechanism by which James Earl Jones's voice could be used, and this was done with his and the estate's permission. So to me, this is like, okay, another nothing burger, because if that was done under those terms and conditions, it makes sense to move in this direction.
Well, it was licensed, right? I mean, it's not just could be used; it could be licensed, and this is one of these interesting things when we talk about AI in general and the mass consumption of data and reusing that data in ways that it may not be expected, or it may not actually have been licensed for. That's a very different story than a license use of a pre-provided set of data for generation of an AI voice. I mean, as we talked about again before the show started, I mean, James Earl Jones actually did some additional recordings late in life to ensure that his voice was saved and could be licensed as a means for providing for his estate. But, you know, I do understand both sides of this story from the standpoint of, you know, this is setting a precedent where those people with recognizable voices who have a marketable voice may be able to survive longer career-wise thereby reducing the on-ramp for new voice actors to get into the business, because which would you rather have? James Earl Jones doing the voice acting for the next Darth Vader cartoon in the Clone Wars saga, or some guy who's starting out who has a great resonant deep voice, who might charge more because he's trying to make a living at it, not just make royalties?
Yeah. So at what point after death are you still beholden to other contractual rights that are trying to be established by others?
No, not a contract thing. No, not a contract thing at all. It's a market thing. How do you grow? It's the same discussion I had with a boss and mentor years ago about where we were like distributing our development team. He's like, "Don't worry, you'll be fine. All the technical leaders are going to be here." And I'm like, that's not how it works. People on-ramp into a career, and they will grow into be the next generation of technical leaders. And eventually, you have no technical people at all locally anymore. And that's exactly what this is doing with acting, is if there's no on-ramp to a career, there is no career.
Not an easy thing to fix. And you give a good analogy and a great example. I think you could do the same sort of thing, though, if you say, well, recorded music would do the same as well. Because if I can sample recorded music, what is the benefit of paying potentially more money for someone to play music either live or to be recorded for something else if I could just license what was already created, right?
And we've seen that in the recording industry too, right? With streaming music, people only really unless you're a big megastar, the people who are trying to make a journeyman's living are constantly touring, because that's a live performance and people will pay to go see you there.
Right.
I'm going to cut in at this point because we seem to be really sticking on this particular topic, and let's move along instead of move along like the stormtroopers say.
Yes,
these aren't the droids you're looking for.
This is not the story you're listening for.
Move along, and it is frustrating, and humans going to human. People are going to misuse the technologies that they're given, which is an immediate use case here. But hopefully, the technologies that Google announced at I/O this week will not immediately be misused by everyone. What do we think?
I didn't see all of them, but what I did do is I used NotebookLM that Google provided of all their content to allow me to look at what are the top 10 or 5 things that would be interesting.
Yeah.
I thought their XR designs of their glasses that they're proposing fairly quickly look interesting. They look like a maturity and a more consumer-friendly version of Google Glass, but with a lot more of those functions that people thought Glass would have but never did.
I think this is all very interesting. I think the piece you just mentioned about XR and Glass is interesting, but a couple of elements of the whole set of announcements that came out this week at Google I/O are fascinating. One of them is, there's the traditional Verge article with the 15 links to the top 15 things, and then you go through and each of those clicks into the next level of detail. But as Michael, you just said, Google themselves then released a NotebookLM resource that let you drill into the announcements, that links to all of Google's own announcements as the input, and then you can interrogate it. So what do? I'm a Google user. I have a subscription to Google One because I want to use their storage for things with the family. Are you going to
use Ultra?
That gives me access to or the sort of next level up of Gemini. So I pop into NotebookLM and I say, okay, based on my personal specific usage of Google's products that you should know about because
that's cool.
Which of these announcements do you see being most useful?
Ooh, and
did they point you at the Verge article?
Can you guess what happened, gentlemen?
It
Ultra,
blew up.
The $250 a month plan.
Neither of those things. It simply just started reciting the average most useful products to an average Google user. Even though I then went on to specifically say, no. Based on what you know about my specific usage across the Google product suite, that's what I'm asking about, not the average user, not the general median.
And you're logged in as you in your Google One account that you're paying 100%. For that has access to all your data.
But how locked down are you from a privacy perspective, Andy?
So if I'm asking, I do have access to some of the other things in, let's say, Google Drive or whatever, it will look at my stuff and tell me stuff. Either way, it should at least be able to say, oh, Andy has a Gmail account, so here's some features in Gmail, I would imagine, right? Frustrating.
So what you're saying is it was just as good as Apple Intelligence.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. So look, the other cool thing that you could do with this is is a feature of NotebookLM, is that you can then generate an audio conversation, which will generate you that cool kind of Radiolab style, talking heads type conversation about the announcements, which could be useful, but probably not from my perspective, because I can flip through the Verge, scroll through the Verge article, see if there are things in there that look intriguing, and click through to them. I'm impressed with the way that they went all in on doing the announcements and then putting all the announcements into NotebookLM. That was smart. Disappointed with the outcomes because they haven't really helped me.
Yeah, I was disappointed for a different reason, Andy. I've played with NotebookLM before for other things, where it's helped me get smart fast. And I've been able to do things like, okay, here's a book where the text of the book might be available open source, so go summarize it for me, play me a podcast, and by the time I get to my destination, I've at least gotten a little smarter on the subject. So I thought, hey, this is super. I could do the same thing here. So I did. I had it generate an audio for me, which it took a little time for it to generate the audio, and it was doing this through a web page. And then as I started on my trip home, just a half an hour drive, I had it start playing. Where I failed in the end was when my phone locked, it stopped playing. So at a stop sign, it's like, okay, unlock the phone, press the play button again, and then a little ways later, it stopped again because my phone locked and the audio stopped playing. And I was like, oh, come on.
But that's Apple doing that to you.
Maybe.
I have the same problem when I get the preview of this show sent through in Apple Messages, and I start playing it in the car through Messages, and then my phone locks, and I lose it. It stops playing, which is annoying. Well, look, let's really quickly hit.
Aren't these great problems to have?
Let's really quickly hit on a couple of the announcements here, just really fast. So, Michael, you mentioned the glasses, which I think is interesting. I think it's interesting and not surprising that they've gone with a third party and they've chosen Xreal, which is the folks that were building those kind of glasses that we've seen mentioned a few times. Yeah, the kind of glasses that and somebody's built like a Cyberdeck version where he can just walk around with his Xreal glasses on and have his like virtual screens and stuff. So that was pretty cool. Again, Google have been down the glasses route before. Let's see what happens this time, because they do love to cancel things and just give up after a short period of time. The one that jumped out at me here is that Project Starline, which was their 3D video chat booth. I'm sure we must have talked about it in a previous year's show, but there was aimed at office spaces. Is going to be some kind of HP branded device that's got some kind of clever light field display that's going to have enable you to see a 3-dimensional appearing person on the other end that you're talking with. That sounds curious. Looks like it's got Deloitte, Duolingo, and Salesforce using it. Although I thought Duolingo was getting rid of all of their normal employees and replacing them with AI anyway. So quite what they'll be using that for is another matter.
So they'll have Gemini talking to Perplexity's UI in a joint 3D space.
Kind of like the little what did we have before? It was Alexa and something else chatting with one another back and forth.
Siri.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And of course we're going to get a Gemini button directly in Chrome that's just going to summarize everything that we're looking at, so we never have to read in detail anymore. So,
hey, maybe we won't have to do any ads then, except for the fact that they're trying to figure out how to inject ads into AI results nowadays.
Well, it's The Verge picks out 15 things. Go have a look through their story if you want to see, kind of get the headlines and you haven't followed Google I/O this week. The other big news story on the other side of the big tech space was Sam Altman at OpenAI and Jony Ive joining forces. So OpenAI is buying Jony Ive's startup that was building some kind of hardware, and we otherwise know nothing, as far as I can tell from this story, right?
Yeah, well, it was a Wall Street Journal exclusive, so therefore, it was a lot of nothing as yet, because there is nothing to be sold yet. So this couples nicely with all of the other AI device conversations and successes and less than successes that we've seen. It does talk about the humane AI pin. It does talk about some other things. So we'll all be waiting with bated breath to find out what is the AI hardware that will make, in fact, a big difference.
I believe, though, that they also specified that it's a completely new form factor that's never been seen before, which means it won't be a phone, it won't be a speaker, it won't be glasses, it won't be a pin, it won't be a watch.
Yeah.
What are we left with?
Brain implant.
Yeah, we've seen that before.
Or maybe a toe ring.
Not an AI brain implant.
I'm thinking, we have the smart rings. Maybe a toe ring would be an approach to...
Nose ring. It's an earring. That's it. It'll be an earring.
It'll be like Bewitched, so that way when you wiggle your nose, you can conjure things into being.
Yeah.
It's very mysterious, but some people are very excited about it.
Yeah, the big thing that I've heard this week, there was Bloomberg, Mark Gurman tweet, posted about this somewhere, and I don't remember where I saw it. But the presentation of them coming together is supposed to is being pitched as Jony Ive's design chops with Sam Altman's product chops. And so this is once again the dream team of Jobs and Ives, and now it's Altman and Ives. And so whatever it's going to come out is going to be great.
Software and hardware, baby.
Trust us. So we'll see.
100 million, though. That's a big number.
I just noticed something I'm just going to throw in here. We are moving forward, but at the same time, I'm just going to mention that whilst I've got my NotebookLM tab still open here,
yes,
and looking disappointedly at the fact that it couldn't answer the question I asked. When I went to check my settings, Michael, you suggested maybe I was locked down somehow.
Yeah.
Under the settings menu,
yes,
there is a link to Discord, and you click on Discord, and it indeed opens a link to take you into a Discord server, which is baffling to me because this is Google.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving along. Let's talk about
new devices.
Let's talk about stuff that got Michael Rowe excited that he can start doing with his Vision Pro.
Yeah. So there's been all this talk about nobody knows what to do with the thing. It was too expensive. Blah blah blah. Who cares, right? I saw this yesterday. And it also showed up on one of the podcasts that was in my feed of a really unique way this one guy is using his Vision Pro. Now, what he does is he installs Ethernet network settings and configurations in people's houses. And if you don't have that context and you just watch this video as some of us did before the show, you're like, what the hell is this guy doing? He's just, putting down stuff and shoving it through walls as he's walking around his house with his Vision Pro on.
But traffic cones and Lego minifigs.
Yes, and Darth Vaders and Iron Mans and Coke cans or whatever. But what this guy does is, I had never thought of this, and I thought it was genius. He's actually using this as he's looking for placement of hardware to be installed within the house, access points, wires, etc. And so he's taking USDZ files, enlarging them and shoving them either down through the floor or up through the ceiling or through the walls, so that when he gets to that other location, either above or below him or in crawl spaces, he can see points that are appropriate to identify what's the best place to put this access point, what's the best place to drop this line, etc. And I thought this was brilliant. What a cool use case.
It actually, watching it and having that context, I didn't have the sound on as you alluded to.
Mm-hmm.
That does make a lot of sense. And yeah, you simply can't. You have to be sort of tapping between walls to figure out where, or marking things and measuring things exactly and working out where things go. So that whole tethering of objects independently in space you have access to with the Vision Pro was quite clever. It would still be better, though, don't you think, if we didn't have to have the big bulky headset or sleek headset, depending on whether you've got a Meta Quest or an Apple Vision Pro, and it all just lived on your eyeball.
Oh, yeah.
It would.
Yeah. We've talked about that once or twice before, haven't we?
Things living on your eyeball.
Oh, yeah. Spiders.
Yeah.
Yes.
Spiders, particularly.
And this is another story about things living on your eyeballs.
Well, this is a story about...
From The Guardian.
From The Guardian, about some researchers in China who have come up with some contact lenses that apparently can enable wearers to see infrared light, parts of the electromagnetic spectrum there with infrared, and then not needing any power supply, and you'll be able to see infrared as well as the regular color spectrum, so giving you really a much broader range of vision opportunity, which, if this works, that could be quite an interesting set of super skills, depending on your use case.
I thought this was brilliant. At Moogfest some years back, I was on one of their tracks where they did a science track, and they were doing about extra sensory skills with brain implants, phantom limb syndromes, etc. And they talked about how well our brain is at adapting to new inputs, and having that overlay all the time via these contact lenses of being able to see in infrared. It's just fascinating to see what that would do, because your brain will adapt to that and figure it out pretty quickly.
Well, why stop there? There are other non-visible electromagnetic spectrum that if you kind of went further, could you see through the wall? Could you, envision it without having to have that headset on? Lots more to be done. And the article I thought was really kind of cool here too, that talked about you can actually see better in infrared if you closed your eyes, because your eyes are blocking out the visible light spectrum, which allowed the infrared to penetrate it a little bit better. So,
but what if you closed one eye?
Then you'd be
well, it would also, that could also be quite frustrating though, if you want to sleep and it's you're closing your eyes.
Well, the context, you just take them out. You're going to bed.
Well, right, exactly. But yeah, it depends on the context and how they're being used.
Yep.
I like the proposal that they could help people with color blindness, or a similar technique could help people with color blindness by sort of shifting the wavelengths around. So that sounds quite fascinating. We want to revisit a story that we hit at the end of last week's show, which was, we just heard that day that Michael was going to spend all of his
Aston Martin money
wealth on a new Aston Martin to complete his Apple portfolio, to get the CarPlay Ultra.
Yeah, and it was all joking aside. Last week it was just kind of a high level ad that it's there, and this is an episode of Top Gear where they actually do a 20-minute deep dive on the vehicle. So for those who are interested, take a look at the video. It's really cool. And there are now multiple car manufacturers who have actually publicly committed to do this. So you won't have to spend Aston Martin money.
If they figure out a way, and this has worked in cars in the past with their in-car entertainment systems, to incorporate physical controls,
physical buttons. Yep.
So like I think BMW or Mercedes have done this in the past, where you've had some kind of dial on the center console that you could turn, or like it was almost like a joystick that you could turn or push.
Yeah, that was
press.
BMW's goofy thing. What did they call that, Michael?
Oh, I don't remember exactly.
It
was a big round thing
for navigation around like a screen.
Yeah.
And again, it gave you that ability. And in fact, I read a story this week as well, that yesterday, I believe, that was talking about how you can switch on the assistive voiceover tech in CarPlay to actually improve your experience with to get past the voice assistants problems with playing the right playlist and things like that, you can actually use voice navigation to tell it specifically which album to pick in your library, and it works very well. So,
well, the one thing I really liked about the Lucid when I looked at that car a couple of years ago was it had both CarPlay and duplicative physical buttons.
Yeah,
and
that
switches.
sounds useful as well. Yeah.
Which I would rather have, right? Anyway, I know we're just about out of time, but there's a couple of game topics in here.
Yeah, we are allegedly a technology about gaming technology and play, as well as business and all kinds of other stuff.
It says so in our opening.
It says so in our opening, so I feel like we should definitely include this. Microsoft have added. Well, so there was this announcement yesterday on I picked up through The Verge. It was made elsewhere as well, that Microsoft were adding over 50 retro classics to Game Pass, and I thought this was exciting because I've got Game Pass. Reading more into it, it talks about sort of Atari and some of the other older devices that you're going to get access to here, even SNES and original PlayStation games. It turns out to be the Antstream technology, so Antstream already have like a streaming service to play a lot of these retro games, and this is just a segment of Antstream's games that you'll be able to play for free through Game Pass. I'm not complaining. I get Game Pass. I pay for Game Pass. I'm getting some free new retro games, and I'm a big retro game fan. But I haven't had a chance to play with any of these. I could not play them using Xbox game streaming, cloud gaming, while I was lying in bed last night because none of them support touch controls. But there you go. Disappointment. First world problems.
Well, you can touch the keyboard back in the day.
The other gaming story here was that Games Workshop did have done a big celebration announcing some new games coming out, and I think it's called the Skulls event or something like that. And as part of that, they released a free game, which is their bolt gun shooter, which is kind of like a retro-ish, Doom-ish shooter. I actually really enjoy Bolt Gun, the game on the Xbox, but they've kind of crossed it with House of the Dead, typing House of the Dead, and made a typing tutor where you can type along with and have your Space Marine take out the enemies, which looked kind of fun.
Yeah, couldn't play it, so
it's free.
I'll wait for your review.
Oh, okay. Well, I should get on that, I guess. let me go play some games, and I'll get reviewing them.
Well, there we go. Time is done.
Speaking of reviews, we could use yours. We could use your review over on your favorite podcatcher, or hit us up on Mastodon. Other than that, tell your friends. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear from them. Rate us, subscribe, etc., etc., etc.
Absolutely.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye. You've been listening to GamesAtWork.biz, the podcast about gaming technology and play. We are part of the Blueberry Podcasting Network, and would like to thank the band Random Encounters for their song, Big Blue. You can follow us at our website at GamesAtWork.biz.